chee, kaew. I was on page 122. I am now on page 123. So I'm going to carry on. If you neglect to cultivate your inherent mindfulness and wisdom, striving only half-heartedly, the obstacles in your path will multiply until they block all sight of the way, leaving the end of the road forever in darkness. Failings of the Spirit. Ajahn Ham Phan was the inspiration behind the Fugao monastic community. It was his responsibility to guide the nuns in their daily practice. This meant frequent contact with the woman renunciants, meeting them as a group, listening to their experiences and grievances, and giving them personal advice on a variety of matters. His age and senior status seemed to preclude the development of worldly attachments between him and the women he taught, but alas, the weaknesses of the flesh and failings of the spirit. A small group of nuns was left behind when Mai Chi, Kaew, and the others moved to Nok Kraba cave. During their absence, Ajahn Ham Phan, with careless disregard for his status as a spiritual mentor, became emotionally involved with one of the remaining nuns. Although his samadhi meditation allowed him to observe and examine the circumstances of other living beings, Ajahn Ham Phan had neglected to contemplate and penetrate the true nature of his own being by failing to properly cultivate the faculties of insight and wisdom. He neglected to follow a fundamental tenet of the Buddha's teaching. He did not thoroughly investigate the aggregates of body and mind to see that they are wholly transient, unsatisfactory, and devoid of personal essence. In the deep meditative absorption of samadhi, body and mind merge into a single conscious unity. The mind's essential knowing nature, pure and simple, still and silent. This convergence gives rise to a feeling of pure and harmonious being so wondrous as to be indescribable, and so perfectly pleasurable that it may become addictive. But regardless of how sublime their experience is, these states of meditative absorption are still defiled by the presence of craving, anger, and delusion. Samadhi experiences of this kind will be no more than mundane in nature, and the spiritual insights gained from them will result in mundane wisdom, still tainted by those defiling influences. A mind simplified and unified by samadhi becomes very deep, clear, and powerful. Hello, Clipwork Real. Peace be upon you. In the deep meditative absorption of samadhi, body and mind merge into a single conscious unity. The mind's essential knowing nature, pure and simple, still and silent. This convergence gives rise to a feeling of pure and harmonious being, so wondrous as to be indescribable and so perfectly pleasurable that it may become addictive. But regardless of how sublime their experience is, these states of meditative absorption are still defiled by the presence of craving, anger, and delusion. Samadhi experiences of this kind will be no more than mundane in nature, and the spiritual insights gained from them will result in mundane wisdom still tainted by those defiling influences. A mind simplified and unified by samadhi becomes very deep, clear, and powerful. Only by directing this focus to the practice of contemplation can true transcendent wisdom be attained. A profoundly insightful investigation of the body, feelings, and the mind can uproot afflictions of craving, hatred, and delusion, thus realizing the ephemeral and empty nature of all phenomena, eliminating craving and achieving freedom from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Concentration and wisdom must work together, propelling meditation towards its goal like the two wheels of a cart. The calm and concentration of samadhi enables wisdom to reach and remove deep-seated defilements through the use of specialized contemplative techniques. By uprooting these perversions, wisdom in turn deepens meditative calm. Thus, concentration and wisdom work in tandem to guide the meditator along the Buddha's path to enlightenment. Emerging from the sublime calm and concentration of samadhi, Ajahn Ham withdrew no further than the access gate to the vast external world of spiritual energies. Instead of using samadhi's sharp and clear internal focus to investigate the truth about his own being and his attachment to the physical and mental components that comprised it, he turned his attention outward to the world of subtle conscious energy fields. Hello, Paul, peace be upon you. Emerging from the sublime calm and concentration of samadhi, Ajahn Ham withdrew no further than the access gate to the vast external world of spiritual energies. Yeah, thank you, Paul. Peace be upon you. I hope you are well. Instead of using samadhi's sharp and clear internal focus to investigate the truth about his own being and his attachment to the physical and mental components that comprised it, he turned his attention outward to the world of subtle conscious energy fields. Because he did not use liberating wisdom to develop defenses against his baser instincts, he remained subject to sexual craving and thus gripped by the sensual bonds of deluded existence. Taqwa Yahya, it's Ramadan, so you shouldn't be saying such words. I'm assuming you're Muslim because of your name. Emerging from the sublime calm and concentration of samadhi, Ajahn Ham withdrew no further than the access gate to the vast external world of spiritual energies. Instead of using samadhi's sharp and clear internal focus to investigate the truth about his own being and his attachment to the physical and mental components that comprised it, he turned his attention outward to the world of subtle conscious energy fields. Thank you, Paul. It's going to be, I think there's something like 5 or 4 days left. Because he did not use liberating wisdom to develop defenses against his baser instincts, he remained subject to sexual craving and thus gripped by the sensual bonds of deluded existence. By the time my chee, Kaew returned from Nok Kraba cave, Ajahn Hamfan's infatuation with one of the junior nuns was becoming apparent. but because of his senior leadership position in the community and his excellent reputation, the monks and nuns did not dare to reproach him for his indiscretions. Quietly in private consultations, it was hoped that the affair would soon wane and come to an end. So Ajahn Khamfan's sudden announcement that he and the junior nun were giving up the robes and returning to lay life as a married couple caused shock and dismay. Maichi Kaew was saddened by his unexpected departure and disappointed by his failure to live up to the trust that she and the other nuns had placed in his guidance. By that time, the nuns had lived and practiced under his tutelage for nearly 8 years. His disrobing not only created an unpleasant scandal in the monastery, but also left a vacuum of monastic leadership, which forced the nuns to consider relocating as soon as possible to a more suitable environment. Suddenly, the nuns' spiritual leadership became their own responsibility. Yes, thank you. I just came back from shopping with my mom. How has your day been? I hope you're having a good day. Yeah, I think Takwa has left now anyway, so. Mei Chi Dang and Mei Chi Ying convened a nuns-only meeting, which quickly reached a consensus that they should return to their home village immediately and seek a convenient location to establish a monastic community strictly for women. With that goal in mind, Mai Chi Kaew and 6 other nuns moved to Ban Huai Sai in the spring of 1945. Aware of the nuns' sudden hardship and sympathetic to their plight, 2 prominent village elders became their patrons and presented them with 20 acres of farmland located about a mile south from the village center. Situated higher than the surrounding rice fields, the soil had been used for generations to plant cash crops such as cotton, hemp, and indigo. However, a large portion of the land was covered with tangled strands of bamboo and towering hardwood trees, which afforded the nuns adequate seclusion to pursue their spiritual lifestyle undisturbed. The nuns graciously accepted the men's generosity and immediately set to work constructing a forest nunnery. With the help of men and women from Ban Huai Sai, thick patches of undergrowth were cleared to build temporary bamboo shelters. Bamboo sleeping platforms were constructed by splitting sections of bamboo lengthwise, spreading them out flat, then securing them to a bamboo frame with legs, creating a raised sleeping surface of about 6 feet long, 3 or 4 feet wide, and about 1.5 feet above the ground. The roofs were thatched with bundles of tall grass that grew abundantly in the surrounding area. One thatched hut was constructed for each nun, and each hut was spaced as far apart from the others as the living area inside the nunnery would allow. Local villagers helped the nuns create paths for walking meditation beside each of their simple huts. A small but sturdy sala was built in a wide open area that had previously been cultivated. Wooden posts and planks were sawed and trimmed, then nailed into place with wooden pegs to form the basic structure. The roof was a plain grass thatch. A kitchen shelter for preparing meals was constructed nearby, using split bamboo and thatch. An earthenware, wood-fired stove was used for cooking. Basic living requisites were scarce, The nuns used bamboo to make cups and other basic kitchen utensils. As there were no wells on the property, water from a nearby stream was fetched daily and carried to the nunnery compound. Basic commodities such as shoes were not available to the nuns, so they used dried betel nut husks to make primitive sandals. Machetes, hoes, and shovels were also hard to come by, forcing the nuns to borrow most of their tools from the village. But although chee, kaew, and the nuns lived in conditions of virtual poverty, they lived for the sake of Dharma and were willing to accept the inconveniences associated with its practice. Hello again, Paul. The Ban Huai Sai nunnery was small and remote from village life. The training rules were strict and simple. Its living conditions allowed little that was fancy or superfluous. The nuns spent their days in meditation. Every evening they convened in the main sala, seated respectfully on the hard wooden floor in a building without comfort or decoration. They chanted sacred verses, praising the virtues of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Chee Kaew often said that it was much easier to put up with the physical hardships of life as a nun than to be without a good teacher to guide her through the spiritual uncertainties experienced in meditation. The bitter disappointment of seeing Ajahn Ham succumb to the power of sensual lust hung like a heavy weight over Chee Kaew's heart. She was seized by a nagging need to understand why meditation had failed to protect him from ordinary base desires. She found herself grappling with thoughts full of doubt and disquiet. Was her own meditation going in the right direction? Had she overlooked an essential element? Pondering these questions but lacking answers, she decided that she must search for a truly qualified teacher. As the two senior-most nuns, Mai Chi Dang and Mai Chi Ying, were responsible for the day-to-day running of the nunnery, with their sympathy and their blessings, Chee Kaew parted company with the group of women she had lived with for 8 years and left the newly established nunnery to fulfill her mission. Following the rains retreat and traveling with a junior nun as a companion, Chee Kaew climbed into the Phu Phan foothills north of Ban Huai Sai and continued to hike north along foot trails over tall mountains and through wide valleys until she reached Ajahn Kongma Chirapunno's forest monastery high in the easternmost Phu Phan range. The human body is a major object of craving and attachment. Suffering is the inevitable consequence. Look at the body. It is a heap of flesh and blood, 2 feet wide and 6 feet long, that is changing every moment. Body contemplation. Upon arrival, Chee Kaew met Ajahn Kongma at the monastery's main sala. After paying her respects, she told him about her doubts and disquiet regarding the events that clouded her spiritual environment and threatened to undermine her calm and concentration. Her meditation had not gone smoothly since Ajahn Hamfan's disrobing, and she did not understand why. Ajahn Kongma knew intuitively that her strong mental focus needed to be directed away from the pursuit of external phenomena, with its attachment to form, and toward a full examination of her own personal being. Because her former teacher had fallen victim to carnal desires, he, he insisted that she start by initiating a comprehensive review of her physical body. Ajahn Kangma suggested that Mai Chi Kayu begin body contemplation by focusing on the disgusting features and inherent impurities associated with the human body, starting with head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, and skin, then working inward to flesh, sinews, bones, marrow, kidneys, heart, membrane, spleen, lungs, intestines, bowels, stomach, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, skin grease, saliva, mucus, rheum, and urine. He insisted that she cease focusing on the external phenomena that had so fascinated her up to then, and turn the full force of her attention inward to investigate the physical components of the bodily presence that she identified as herself. Respectfully but hesitantly, Meichi Kayu accepted his advice without objection, but she was not satisfied. For her, focusing inward meant repeating the mantra Buddha until her mind dropped into a state of deep calm. Ajahn Mun taught her this simple practice many years before, and she felt stubbornly reluctant to change. Certain she already knew the way of meditation, she was not prepared to put Ajahn Kangma's advice to a serious test. She stuck doggedly to her usual practice, even though the results continued to bring disappointment and uncertainty. The longer she resisted Ajahn Kangma, the more her mind refused to drop into a fully calm and concentrated state. For months, stubbornness prevented her mind from converging into stillness. Maichi Kayu became exasperated at her lack of progress and felt herself at wit's end. One night, as she walked in meditation, she began to rebuke herself harshly. It had been raining since nightfall, but she refused to go inside. The time had come to teach herself a lesson. Pacing back and forth all night, in the pouring rain, she chastised her stubborn, conceited attitude. Determined to not give up until she had redeemed herself, she examined her faults over and over again to find out why her heart was so unyielding. Although Ajahn Kangma provided her with all the right conditions she needed to progress in meditation, she had doggedly refused to give way. She knew her stance was unreasonable and that it must be changed. She asked herself, how can I really know the truth when the mind that I use to acknowledge the truth, the mind, she asked herself, how can I really know the truth when the mind that I use to acknowledge the truth is so deluded? The following day, having fully accepted her faults, she resolved to make amends for her intransigence. Solemnly prostrating before the Buddha, she silently asked heartfelt forgiveness of Ajahn Kangma. After preparing her mind by intoning auspicious chants, she began meditating in earnest on the nature of the human body. Maichi Kayu contemplated the body by meditating on its inherent impure and repulsive nature. She first reflected on the obvious disgusting features that afflict the body while alive. The nose was constantly filled with mucus, the ears with wax, and the skin exuded sweat and grease. The body continually excreted feces and urine, and without constant cleaning it reeked of foul odors and suffered discomfort. With constant practice, she began to understand clearly that much of her discontent stemmed from embracing the body as the core of her existence and regarding it as a central feature of self and personality. Though it was not obvious in her Though it was not obvious in her ordinary consciousness and attitudes, this belief was fundamental and deep seated, operating at a subliminal and instinctive level of consciousness. Then, by embodying this basic instinct in her conscious activities, she projected a very concrete sense of self into all her actions. She realized that a person's life is often deliberately planned around desires related to the body, constant concern with matters of appearance, fashion, self esteem, and personal comfort. By meditating on the body's impure nature, Chee Kaew began to experience it as inherently repulsive and unstable, something that repelled rather than attracted desire. Through the daily practice of body contemplation, she gradually reduced the craving that had built up around the body, working to free herself from the strong sense of self associated with it. In her daily meditations, she took the body apart piece by piece, layer by layer. Investigating skin, she saw it as a thin veneer of tissue covering the body's flesh and internal organs. Although at a casual glance it might appear clean and attractive, closer inspection revealed a scaly, wrinkled layer exuding sweat and grease in abundance. Only constant scrubbing and cleansing made it seem bearable to oneself and to others. Hair may be brushed and styled with care and admired for its overall appearance, but let a few strands fall into a plate of food and they quickly induce a reflexive loss of appetite. Head hair and body hair are inherently filthy, which is the reason they must be constantly washed and bathed. In fact, nothing that comes into contact with any part of the human body remains clean for long, as the whole body is filthy by its very nature. Due to the Due to the filth and odors accumulated from our bodies, clothing and bedding must be constantly laundered. Even food becomes filthy once it is ground between the teeth and mixed with the body's secretions. The whole body shares the same repugnant characteristics. After deeply contemplating the natural filthiness of the body's external features, Chee Kaew investigated its internal organs and their secretions and its many foul excretions. Having carefully examined hair, nails, teeth, and skin, with a growing sense of dismay, Chee Kaew mentally peeled back the outer layer and visualized the body stripped of skin, the underlying flesh exposed, raw, and bloody. Close examination of this glistening mass of blood-stained tissue produced nauseating revulsion, keeping in mind that this sight was no aberration, but rather the reality of the body she had lived with her entire life. She delved deeper into the sinews, the bones, and the internal organs. Bands of flesh hugged the bones like raw meat. She envisioned the heart, liver, kidneys, spleen, lungs, stomach, intestines, and bowels, all sloshing around in mucus-coated cavities formed within the contour of the rib cage and hip bones, and held in place by a plaster of fibrous membranes. Methodically, she visualized each organ within its own context, each encased in fat and oozing blood and viscous secretions, each enclosing putrid excretions waiting to be discharged. By using her strong mental focus to explore deeply into the body's internal composition, kaew saw for the first time, with penetrative insight, the body's true nature. Seeing it clearly with wisdom, she was able to extend that insight to include all bodily substances and realize that they all had the exact same nature. She understood that the entire body was disgusting and repulsive, and that no stable or satisfactory personal essence could be found there. At that moment of profound realization, her mind suddenly dropped into total stillness. A small, faint spot of light located deep inside her heart began to flicker and glow. It pulsed and grew brighter, expanding its radiance until her entire conscious being was captured in light and became bright, clear, buoyant, and supple. She withdrew from meditation at dawn and completed her morning chores. A subtle sense of harmony and integration pervaded her every moment. The reserve and hesitancy that formerly showed in her demeanor disappeared. She was happy and cheerful as she offered food to the monks for their morning meal. Noticing her dramatic change, Ajahn Kongma announced for all to hear, chee kaew, you're on the right path now. Stay resolute. Hello, Shannon. Peace be upon you. I hope you are well. With her meditation back on track, chee kaew stayed with Ajahn Kongma for several more months, taking advantage of the opportunity of living with a good teacher to deepen her concentration and cultivate her powers of wisdom. She understood now why Ajahn Khamfan's meditation had failed to protect him from ordinary and base desires rooted in attachment to physical form. She understood the powerful attraction of sensual craving, and she knew the way to neutralize it. When she finally felt confident that she had developed a solid foundation in her practice, she decided to return to help the other nuns at the Ban Huai Sai nunnery. She was concerned that they still lacked a reliable teacher to guide them on the correct path. She believed that she could now contribute her part. She believed that she could now contribute her part and help fulfill that role. As nuns, we must all patiently endure the inevitable hardships of our simple existence without becoming lazy or disgruntled. Let love and compassion be your ready response to every situation. Ideal Buddhist nun. That's all for today, guys. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and thanks for the people who liked and for all the friendly people. Peace be upon you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and I hope you have a good week ahead. Peace be upon you.